The most fashionable event of the year is back in Pokemon Go, so to celebrate the return of Fashion Week, I'll be giving my top 5 picks for the most stylish costume Pokemon to strut the runway. So cue the intro, and let's get started! Welcome back, everyone! So the 2023 edition of Fashion Week just kicked off, and that means a bunch of costume Pokemon will be taking over the game. We've got returning costume mons like Croagunk, Sneasel, and Absol, as well as a couple newcomers like Wooper and Dratini. Gotta say, these new additions are really cool. So getting into the topic of today's Voguish video, I'm going to be ranking my top 5 favorite costumes in all of Pokemon Go. Now let me just say, it was extremely tricky picking just 5 Pokemon for this list, since there's so many unique and interesting variants across the game. However, I chose these 5 specifically because of their uniqueness as well as my personal experience with catching them. But before we jump into this list, we have the results of our 3 years of TogeTips giveaway to announce. And the winners are, drumroll please, these trainers right here. Congrats to all 3 of you for winning a mythical Mew for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I've already reached out on how you can claim your Mew, so be sure to check your comments if you haven't already. Also, shout out to everyone else that entered our giveaway, and stay tuned because we plan on doing more giveaways in the future. So now that we've got the housekeeping out of the way, let's dive into the list. So leading things off at number 5 on my list, I chose Spheal wearing a holiday scarf. Now this costume from the 2021 holiday event is relatively simple, yet embodies the season it represents quite well. Unlike other winter costumes that make their Pokemon look silly or lazily designed, I think Spheal's holiday costume really works. Now another interesting fact about Costume Spheal was when it was released, Spheal's Shiny was also added to the game. Now this was a first for Pokemon Go, and I'll admit I was a bit frustrated that such a good and useful Shiny was locked behind an unevolvable costume. Though shortly after it began spawning, Niantic announced they would be getting a Calm Day in January. So after that announcement, Spheal's costume began to grow on me, so in 2022, I actively hunted it to get a shiny one. And lucky enough for me, I was able to get not just 1, but 2 scarf-wearing Spheals before the holiday ended. To this day, it's one of the few costume shinies I have in my collection, so that's why scarf-wearing Spheal makes my list at number 5. But moving on to my 4th favorite Pokemon, I chose Sableye wearing a Litwick hat. This spooky specter appeared during the 2020 Halloween event, which was one of the best Halloween events in my opinion. That year's freaky festivities featured the debut of Galarian Yamask, Shiny Spiritomb, and a ton of awesome costume Pokemon to boot. However, what makes this one stand out from the crowd was the fact that Sableye is a one-stage Pokemon. See, most events before this had costume mons with evolutions, but because they came with costumes, they couldn't evolve to their more useful forms. So if you got one with stats for PvP or a hundo, you were kinda out of luck. This wasn't an issue for Sableye though, since it's already at its final evolution, and Sableye has some niche use in the Great League of the Go Battle League, so getting one with a costume meant you could show some extra flair when using it in battle. Now Sableye did get a Mega Evolution earlier this year, however you're able to Mega Evolve costume Pokemon, so this wasn't a problem for Sableye either. And lastly, I just think this costume is really awesome. The Litwick hat really fits with Sableye's design, making it a surefire addition to my costume list. Now for the midway Pokemon on my fashion list, I chose Sneasel from the 2021 Fashion Week. This Pokemon wears a beanie hat and shades, making it an even cooler cat than it already was. Now unfortunately, you can't evolve this Pokemon to its more useful evolution, but I don't really think that matters. Weavile is somewhat of a common Pokemon now, plus there's far better Ice-type attackers you can use in raid battles. With the accessories and pose that Sneasel sports, this is one of the few costumes I'd say that's cool as it is. Now for my second favorite costume Pokemon, we're going to be going back to the 2020 Halloween event with Mega Banette Gengar. Now this particular costume is really unique. They didn't just give Gengar a simple hat, glasses, or bow, rather they went all out and gave Gengar an incredibly detailed, mega awesome costume. Now like I mentioned with Sableye previously, it's great that Gengar is at its peak evolution. That means if you find a good one, you're able to unleash its true potential in PvP, raids, or Mega Evolve it into the menacing Mega Gengar. Honestly, there's really only one downside to this costume, and that's the fact that it hasn't been available since 2020. And it's because of this that I really hope we see this costume return in a future spooky spectacle. But all this and more just cements this costume at number 2 on my list. So at this point in the video, we're 4 costumes down, and that means we only have just 1 more to go. But before I get into who my favorite costume Pokemon is, I want to know what your favorite costume is. Are you a fan of any of the ones on my list, or do you prefer another from the multitude of costume variants? Either way, be sure to let us know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, then consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing for more awesome Pokemon content, including analyses, tips and tricks, and speculation on all different kinds of Pokemon games. Alright, I've kept you all waiting long enough. For the final entry on my list, drumroll please. My favorite costume Pokemon in Pokemon Go goes to Armored Mewtwo. Gotta say, this variant of the Kanto Legendary is a staple in my costume collection, though it wasn't always my favorite. See, back in 2019, there was a reimagining of the first Pokemon movie called Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution, and to coincide with its release, Pokemon Go announced that Armored Mewtwo would soon be coming to Legendary Raids. Now, when I first heard about this promotion, I assumed that we'd be seeing the OG Armored Mewtwo from the early 2000s. However, when it was revealed to be a more modern variation, I thought it was pretty underwhelming. Not gonna lie, it kind of reminded me of a peacock when I first saw it. But all jokes aside, what was really unique about this costume was that it was treated like a completely new form of Mewtwo, with unique defensive stats and different moves from the standard Mewtwo. Despite this though, I only got a few during both of its raid rotations, and the main reason for that is that it didn't have much use in the game outside of being a trophy. Now, about a month or so after its second raid rotation, the Go Battle League was established. It was here that Mewtwo saw play in the Open Ultra League, especially with its use of Psystrike from its second raid rotation. It was also at this point that I figured we'd see Mewtwo again in 2021, and while Mewtwo did make an appearance during the Kanto Tour, its movie variant remained elusive. It was also the same for 2022 and 2023, and it's because of its scarcity and growth in the GBL that it caused both myself and many others to have a change of heart. But by then, the only way to get one is if you knew someone you could trade with. Besides that, there's no current way to get this costume Pokemon in Pokemon Go. Though I wouldn't count on it being gone forever. With 2024 marking the 5-year anniversary of the revamped movie, it's possible we could see Armored Mewtwo return next year, and maybe this time with its shiny variant. Now that would be really cool, but since it now has a purpose besides being a trophy, it's clear to see why this rare variant has become one of my favorite costumes in my collection. And that's going to do it for my top 5 favorite costumes in Pokemon Go. I really hope you enjoyed my list, and again I'd love to hear some of your favorites in the comments below. Also, if you have any ideas for ranking videos that you'd like to see us do, I'd like to hear your thoughts on those as well. Now we're coming up on the end of the year, which means we only have a few more videos before 2024. However, we've got something really exciting coming that's going to include some speculation for next year's Go Tour event. I guarantee that's something you're not going to want to miss, so make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications so you don't miss that upload. So until then, thank you all so much for watching, and stay fashionable.